everyone, this is Sabrina. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. It's Tuesday, so that means I have a reading journal video, and I love doing these videos with you. I am going to update my journal to do April, the April stats and all that fun stuff. Last week, I previewed a kit that I had from Syncopation Designs, Let's Get Lit, and I showed you all the die cuts and some of the papers, and just kind of a reminder, this is kind of what the kit looks like, and it is absolutely amazing, and I'm so excited for you guys to see how I use this kit in my reading journal. There's also this incredible stamp set called Let's Get Lit, and it has all these amazing stamp phrases on them. I think it's going to be so versatile. There is Night Owl Book Club, Reading Challenge, Let's Get Lit, so many good options, and I will show you more at my desk where we can kind of see close up. But I hope you guys enjoy this reading update. We're gonna go over to my desk and I will speed things up to do a voiceover. Okay, so before I get started on putting together my April update, I wanted to share the stamp sets from Syncopation Designs that I will definitely be using in my projects. I actually took the main stamp set, Let's Get Lit, and I stamped all the stamps and then added in a few from Resting Book Face. But let's go ahead and take a look. So you have two different size couches, which is just amazing. I love that. And then you have bestseller, go away, I'm reading, rainy day, read, and then there's even some raindrops, reading past my bedtime, this is how I roll, and some quotes right here, like favorite quote, best quote, let's get lit, and then an open Facebook, and then a closed book. And like I said in the intro, this is a reading challenge, and so you can put title, author, genre, and my reading, and here's a little list. And then bibliotherapy, I absolutely love that. That is so, so true. I also made a outside the page protector project to include in my Me album. I was doing some summer reading and reading romance from one of my favorite authors, Penny Reed. I think it was 10 Ways to Seduce Your Best Friend. So I actually used several of the pattern papers to make my own flowers, and then hole punched pieces of the paper to make the flower centers. But loved making this page. It was so much fun using a journaling card and then the new stamp set. And then this one is Resting Book Face. There is also another small stamp set called Shelfie, and this one is so fantastic. I'm thinking about making a little book for my daughter so that way she can keep track of her reading books. And you just have 3 different shelves here. Shelfie, make time to read, stay true to your shelf. I mean, how awesome is that? That is so awesome. Genres, rating, author, a little box like to check mark, and then title. So those are the 2 new stamp sets from Syncopation Designs, and I will link them all in the description box. So let's go ahead and switch to voiceover and get started on putting together April. Okay, I hope you are ready for this fun video, and of course a little bit longer because it is updating a whole month of reading. So I always start with putting in my year of books, and don't forget that I have a template that you guys can download to make your own year of books. That is in the January to April 2022 video. So I'll leave that up in the eye. So I am adding in all 15 of my books. I read a lot again and listened to a lot of books during the month of April. And if you watched my video last week, you know that I spent a lot of time in April listening to a Stephen King book and then ran out of time. So made me kind of bummed. I'm still waiting for that book to come through. But it was still a fabulous month of reading. Now, speaking of fabulous, I had a hard time choosing just one book that was my favorite, but I decided to go with Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. just because it was totally unexpected. Like, I knew it was going to be a good book. I liked the author's first book, Dial A for Aunties, but I wasn't expecting this book to be absolutely incredible. I also listened to it, and the narrator was fantastic, had a really great way of bringing the character Vera Wong to life. So, went with that one. I'm going to come back and do my books for the bookshelves because I totally forgot to do those. So I'm going to do that at the end before I start working on the April monthly page. I chose purple to fill in my different squares, and I'm going to have to fill in 3 whole squares and then 3 of a partial one. And then I will go ahead and stamp April. I almost said staple, but I'm not stapling. I am stamping April. And the stamp set that I use is from Everyday Explorers. It has the larger months on it, and then also the smaller months, which I use when a month only takes up a portion of the square, because that just works better. And I just grab a piece of scrap paper and I'm able to stamp a portion of the month. So like for April, I did APR. At least I tried my best, right? I could have probably just used the larger month stamp, but that's okay. So I'm almost done with this, and then I can go on to my 2023 goals, which is coming along really nicely. I do need to check the Goodreads winners and nominees because I don't think that I added in any this month, but I did read the final gamut. I think that's how you say it. And I think that was a winner. So I need to go back and check that. But I finished the goal of goal number 6 already, which I'm just shocked. 3 non-fictions, which is just incredible. And I checked off another box for 100 books, and I also added in my first middle grade book, which is interesting. You would think by this point I would have read more middle grade, but that's okay. So for the letters, I added K for Keeper of the Night, and then the Z is Zorgamazu. I think that's how you say it. And I think that's all I added. Yeah, that's all I added. Oh, I did add V for Vera Wong. I added in that. So I know I'm so picky about what books I decide for A to Z, but I can't help it. This is another area where I need to double check because one of the categories is person of color, and I believe I have a few of those books that I read or by authors that are people of color, so I want to go back and double check that. I read a ton of romances again, and I also read some young adult and a few mysteries. So the category for around the world was the U.S. territories, and I wound up picking Guam, Keeper of the Night. This is actually a really hard category for me to pick, so I'm glad that I found a book and I actually read it on the last day of the month, so I squeezed it in there and I enjoyed this book. It was like a middle grade young adult teenage type of book about some family issues, and they live on the island of Guam. I am adding in the second chapter for Rate the Romance, and this is going to cover April, May, and June, so the next quarter of the year, and I have, I think, 3 books to add already, so I'm off to a good start. Listening to audiobooks definitely helps. I read 2 books and then listened to one of the books. I also want to add a book to the left-hand side since I finished that book like on the 1st of the month, and I was trying to finish it so that way it would go into chapter 1, but I didn't make it on time, and that's okay, but it was called Just My Type, and that book was all right. It was just all right. Same thing with X's and O's. I really enjoyed listening to it, but I'm not sure how I would have done if I had read it because it might have been slow-ish. I don't know, but I really enjoyed listening to it, and that's going to check off the category of being song lyrics or part of a song. And then I read Things We Hide in the Light, which is the second book in the series, and I really want to live in the town. Knockamount, I think that's how you say it. But that is for Flowers on the Cover, and I read the second book in the Heartless series. I don't know if that's what the series is called, but that's the second book, and it works for the category of Canadian author. I am going to go ahead and stamp a few hearts and stars on the corners of the chapter 2, but first I need to fix just my type because it was a little crooked when you lifted it up. I also want to try a new stamp for the rating. So I used the little tiny star stamp from the Shelfie stamp set from Syncopation Designs, and then I'm just stamping my rating for all 3 of the books. Totally messy, but it works, and I like having that rating underneath and the little flip ups. Now I'll add a little bit of stamping in the corners just because I did it on the first chapter, so I felt like I should do it again. Just keep everything consistent, and I'll also add in a few stars too. And then that will complete the chapter 2. And I would have to say, honestly, my favorite romance out of these 3 was Heartless. It was just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. All right, 12 books and 12 friends. I lost my sticky note with like who recommended these books, but someone recommended 84 Sharing Road, and that was the nonfiction that I read. And I listened to it, so it had lots of different voices in it, and it was absolutely fantastic. Incredible, and I loved it, and it'll probably be a favorite book for this month. Okay, so before I go on to April and putting the month together, I'm going to go ahead and fill in my shelves. And again, a really fantastic month of reading with lots of different variety and a good mix between read books and also audiobooks. And I also tend to write out the title based on like the length of the book. So like Things We Hide from the Light was like over 500 pages. So I made sure when I wrote that title that I picked one of the stamped books that was thicker. Just a little quirk that I do when I'm filling out my books. And that way when you see the book title, it kind of represents how long the actual length of the book is. And I'm already on the 3rd row for my books, which is very exciting. Okay, moving on to April. I am going to, again, use this kit from Jennifer Syncopation Designs, and I mentioned this in my video last week, how I'm going to try to make the calendar a little bit bigger since I am listening to audiobooks, and hopefully everything doesn't look, too wonky or too cluttered. I decided to go 5 dots down and still keep the 4 dots across. So 4 dots going down vertical and then 5 for the horizontal. That way it'll give me a little bit of room. But I did not count my days, so I am going to have to go back and add another row because I didn't realize that April starts on a Saturday. So basically my first row is there's only 2 days in my first row, so I'm definitely going to need another row to finish up the month of April. And I'll also say that I just do not have a lot of pink and purple markers that I like. As I'm working on this whole project, it was so frustrating. It's like I wanted a pink and purple markers that kind of match this kit, and I was just really struggling. You can see here that I picked one that I thought worked, but later on I'm going to pick a different one because I just didn't like it. I felt like it was too light of a pink or too bubble gummy, I guess you could say. So once I have all those dots and I'm kind of counting it out to myself, that's when I realize I need to add that last week. And I'm okay with the fact that my calendar is now taking up a good section of my page because I really want to be able to add the dates of the books. And, it's kind of a reflection of how busy I am or not busy based on, how long it takes for me to read a book, mainly a physical book. Audiobooks are much easier to listen to, and I've noticed I'm more willing to do chores. I'm more willing to clean the house and do chores with an audiobook. Or, more willing to ignore my children and make them fend for themselves. So I'm just loving audiobooks, and I'm actually looking for new audiobooks to read. I don't have a lot on my holds list at the library. So if you want to leave a comment and let me know which audiobooks you love and that are like your favorites, please let me know in the comment section. I would love it. I grabbed this Everyday Explorers stamp set because that's the one that I always use to stamp the number of books. And I like to do a stamped sentiment on the left, then the number of books read, and then like a die cut or another stamped something. So it kind of makes a little sandwich for the number of books right in the middle. And I also tend to peel off the stamps that I want to use, place them, and then put everything down. And since my cats are always joining me to read, I put one of those adorable cat die cuts right on top of the couch. That's not exactly realistic because generally my cats are like in my face, on top of my chest, or, you know, just purring at me, basically yelling at me to pet them. But the cat on top of the couch is very cute, and I love how that came out. I just have to put the girl die cut just a little bit higher so I can fit the April stamp, which is just an Allie Edwards stamp from my stash. And I also added a die cut right on top of the couch that says "Lost in a Good Book." So I just love that. Feed Your Craft used to have all kinds of great book die cuts, and one of them was a girl on a couch, and it just, anytime, girl on a couch, love the die cut, keep them coming. They just make me so happy. I added in glasses down at the bottom left, and I also stamped Go Away, I'm Reading, and up at the top, since I have all that extra room with the month starting on Saturday, I stamped I Read Past My Bedtime, and I also used the open-faced book to stamp, and I stamped that up there and also down by the month April. And then I use the little stars to sprinkle throughout my spread. Once I have all the little stamping done, this is when I decide I don't like my pink color. So I try to make it a little darker, and I picked something too dark. So then I went with another one, and I just covered over the little circles. Next month, I am going to pick my colors first, and then I will do all the coloring in, because later on you will see it's hilarious. I'm trying to like figure out what colors I want to use for my pie chart, and it's a mess. So it's going to be fun when we get there, and you can see when that happens. So again, like I said, I started off finishing just my type on the first of the month, and I started listening to Vera Wong as well. And I wrapped that up during that first weekend. And again, such a fantastic book. That is going to be another favorite book for the month. I then listened to Off the Map, which is a romance, and it was super quick, but it was really, really good. It was about being in Ireland, and just a quick little romance book, and I just adored it. A sweet little story. I also read Things We Hide from the Light, like I mentioned, but that book took me most of the week just because it's a really long book. And if you've read any of the reviews of this book, this particular couple, Nash, and oh my gosh, the main character is slipping my mind, but their chemistry doesn't feel like instantaneously and as special as, you know, the first book. So, but I enjoyed it, and I really liked it. I also read The Half-Life of Love, which was like a teenage book, but there was a twist on it about, you know, knowing your death date, and it made things different. It was very interesting, and I'm glad I liked it, or I'm glad I read it, even though I have no idea how I found this book, but I'm glad it turned out to be really great. I also read a kid's book called Zora Gamazoo. I think I was looking for spooky books, and I just decided to order that book, but it was really good. And it's actually written kind of in the style of Dr. Seuss and Ronald Dole, in that it's very whimsical, and it also rhymes. Everything rhymes. So that's a fun book. And like I mentioned, I finished up the month with my Read Around the USA book, Keeper of the Night. Now I'm going to put together my stats page, and I'm actually going to start by putting down the covers. I normally do the covers about 1 inch 1 inch wide, 1.5 inches tall. But because I had 15 books, I knew that I was going to have to shrink them down a little bit. And I was hoping to get 5 in a row, but because the My Rating stamp is a little wider than the book covers, it turned out that wasn't going to work. So I got 3 rows of 4 and then a row of 3. I just needed a little space at the bottom to be able to add my little cluster and also the average rating. So I shrunk, like I said, I shrunk the books down. I think I shrunk them down like 85 to 85%. And it made it work because in Photoshop Elements, I do have a canvas, you know, my gray canvases. If you've seen any of my behind the scene videos, I plan out most of my projects in Photoshop Elements using canvases. And so I have the exact measurements of this journal in Photoshop Elements. That way I can plan out things. And when I go to cut these book covers, they are the size that I need them. I have all the books done, and now I'm going to go on to building the left-hand side with all the stats. And I'm going to do a lot of goofy things when I'm putting together all the stats. As I was putting together this journal, it was a very busy day around the house and with the kids and with life. So there was lots of stop and go, making this. So, if the camera angle changes at all, I apologize. But yeah, it's going to be fun putting this together. I love putting together this journal, but I will say one of the things that I'm going to fix for next month is definitely picking out my colors beforehand, like with my marker, because that'll make it a lot easier if I know what colors I'm going to use ahead of time. I did the same trick I always do with the layered washi tape, kind of states what colors I'm going to use, pinks and purples, and then a little bit of blue, since the die cuts that I pick are going to have blue in them. And again, using the Iris stamp set from Carrie Bradford to stamp all the stats. I also use the numbers in this stamp set to stamp all the different stats that I have. I have a little space over on the right hand side, and that was intentional so that way I could put a cluster. Sometimes I do like a cluster of stamps or leaves. Last month was a lot of leaves and greenery. This month I just did bibliotherapy stamped and then up all night. So just a little cluster like that. And then I layer some washi tape down at the bottom. And I always start my stats page building from the bottom up because I know that I'm going to start with pages, the total number of pages. And I decided this month to do the total number of pages plus the actual like physical number of pages. So the physical number of pages is 3,443, at least according to my story graph. So that really helps and is very handy. But total pages, including the books that I listened to, was 5,292. So I did also add another line for hours listened, and that was 52.48 hours. But again, this does not include the Stephen King book that I was listening to. So mad. How many times can I tell you guys? I'm so mad. I wanted to finish that book. 25% left, and I so wanted to finish it, and I'm still waiting. I will get to finish it someday. The next thing I'm supposed to put, like if I go with the same design, is the genres, but I accidentally put the 3 different categories. You know how I like to include different categories every month, so that's what I did next instead of the genres. Really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but I was kind of frustrated with myself because I do like to keep the same design. So the categories are Unexpected Awesome, Goodreads Number, and Romances. Couldn't really think of a third category, so I just did Romances. And oh, if you want to chime in, leave a comment letting me know like what kind of category you would put there. I would love to know. I'd love to know and have your help on thinking of categories. For genres, I put mystery, romance, historical, thriller, children's, science fiction, fantasy, and poetry. So again, a wide range of genres, and I don't even know if I included every single one of them. So the Unexpected Awesome was 3. Vera Wong's, and let's see, Zorga Mizzou. I thought that was really amazing, and also 84 Charing Road, because I'm not a big nonfiction person, so that one just like blew me away with how amazing it is, and that it was like a true story. So as I'm building this pie chart, I always start with cutting it into quarters because that makes it easier. And then from there, I can break up the different categories. And I stick with 6 different categories, and I am excited to announce that this is the first month where emotional is not going to be the number 1 category. So that is awesome. it doesn't really matter, but I was just like thinking to myself, is every single month going to be emotional? Not this month. This month it was lighthearted. So lighthearted is going to be the biggest one, and then emotional and funny. And I just always leave a small little sliver up at the top for the other categories. And once I have it all drawn in by pencil, I just erase it. And well, first I outline it with my thicker pen and then I erase it. So the next thing I do is I draw the boxes to include paper, Kindle, and audio. And I realize that I have drawn them so far off to the right that there leaves this kind of awkward gap between the pie chart and these boxes. And so I'm like, how can I fix this? And the only way I could think of was to cover up the circles I had already drawn on the far left side and then move my key for the pie chart over to over in between the pie chart and the squares. So that's my thinking. And so I grab a piece of paper and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to cover these up with a piece of paper because using my whiteout pen is not going to work. And I guess, it's not going to make a difference. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, but I really needed to figure out a way to kind of close that gap between the boxes and the pie chart. I tried to disguise the little paper piece by adding in a die cut that says "loved this." And I think that works for the most part. Now, this is where I basically have a party with my markers because I'm just I keep testing them and trying to figure out which one will work best. I wind up going with this really deep purple that doesn't match very well, but it's kind of all I had for purples. The biggest category, lighthearted, is going to get a gray, which is a great neutral. And I'm also going to do a really bright, bold pink. And I will actually fix that later on because I just couldn't do the big bright pink. So I'm going to fix that in a little bit, and that's going to be fun too, trying to figure out how to fix a piece of the pie chart when it's already drawn in. So that's going to be tricky. I go with a light pink, like a soft pink for the chunk that is mysterious. And then the bright pink is the one, like I said, that's going to be the funny books. The first blue that I put down is reflective, and the last category, number 6, is other. That's just all the other categories. And as you can see, I swatched so many different markers. It was, like I said, a party with markers. I was having a whole lot of fun. Now, this is where I decided to grab a scrap piece of paper again and figure out how I can fill in this pink with a light blue, because I think that would work better, because the pink is just, to me, it's kind of almost obnoxious. So I just put the piece of paper in there and I trace the circle on top of it, so that way I get the design of the circle or the size of the circle, and I just kind of trim it as I go. And once I trim it enough that it fills it in, I'm able to adhere it down. I then take that blue, light blue, and I fill in my ratings. And if the rating is like a 4.25, I only color in a little portion of the star. So it kind of looks like I'm just coloring all the stars, but I really am trying to make differentiate between 4 and 4.25. I'm going to put the average rating, and it's going to be a 4.4. The number of paper books was 7, the Kindle was 2, and audiobooks was 6. I'm going to finish up the spread with some stamping of the stars again, and I also put a little Kindle down in the bottom right corner. And right now I'm reading a graphic novel called Squished, and I'd love to know what you guys are reading in the comment section, and I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing this come together. I'd love a thumbs up or a subscribe if you are new to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.